The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled to allow grotesque demonstrations at the funerals of fallen soldiers, sailors, and Marines. The Westboro Baptist Church has been targeting military funerals, with protesters displaying signs like "Thank God for Dead Soldiers," saying the servicemen and women were killed because of America's tolerance of gays. Chief Justice Roberts wrote the majority opinion in favor of those protesters, saying no matter how repulsive their message, their actions are protected speech under the First Amendment. Joining us now is Keith Maupin, father of Iraq war hero Staff Sergeant Matt Maupin, and NKU law professor Ken Katkin, who specializes in the First Amendment. Ken, let's start with you. They say justice is blind, and in this case, is the Supreme Court ruling without regard to the protesters' actual message?
Well, definitely. That's really the point of the ruling, is that free speech is protected without consideration of what the message is.
Particularly if it's unpopular, correct?
Well, that's the only speech that really needs a lot of protecting, is speech that's unpopular. People don't usually try to prohibit popular speech.
Keith, you know, you found out about your son's death after so many months of not knowing if he was dead or alive. You had the full support of the community. Had the Westboro Baptist Church been there or other protesters, would it even have been bearable for you?
Well, they were there. They were there, but the Patriot Guard riders, they really buffered
kept them back, didn't they? Yeah. Now, obviously you can understand the emotional impact, but the irony here is that Matt died protecting their right to protest, to actually, you know, protecting the Constitution. Do you feel that way, or does the emotion overpower that?
Well, I believe that they're allowed to do what they need to do, because just like you said, you know, Matt and the other guys are over there. They're willing to die to be able to have people to do what they're allowed to do, and I don't think it might not be morally right, but I think what they do is legally right. I don't like it.
Interesting. Do you think, you know, in this case, you had their people there actually trying to keep the protesters back? Do you think that's the solution? People stopping people rather than the government stopping people?
You know, I really don't know, but I think the more attention you give them morons, the more they're going to come out.
Interesting, interesting. Is this one of the more challenging cases the Supreme Court has faced on speech because the message was so repulsive, so repugnant?
You know, I don't think from the Supreme Court's perspective this was one of the more challenging cases, because I think they have very clearly been announcing for 30 or 40 years at least that how repugnant a message is not going to be the measure of whether it's protected or not. It's almost 40 years ago that they protected the rights of the Nazis to march in Skokie, Illinois, and it's a similar kind of situation, really. So I think it was, although this was one that a lot of the public was very interested in, I think a lot of lawyers who really study these issues did predict this holding. I don't think it was a close case that way.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks so much for joining us, Ken Katkin and Keith Maupin, for giving us a perspective on this particular ruling, which has been a difficult one, but they say an important one. Thanks very much. Tanya?